Hello and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm Sherry Duckworth, and joining me today is Mr. Jeff McKissick, President for Defense by Design. Thanks for coming back to the show.
And Sherry, I think now I like the fact you've got a designated place for me in the parking lot after this many appearances.
It has a little plaque with your name on it. Yeah. I love it. And I'm glad you're back because when you leave, I always feel more vigilant and I feel more educated on how to keep myself and my loved ones safe. So I hope everyone watching today feels the same way after they watch this.
That's always the goal, is simply to enhance awareness.
Absolutely, which I absolutely love. So for those who are watching for the first time, talk to us a little bit about Defense by Design and how you got started with this.
Well, I'm coming up on my 29th anniversary now of speaking to over 350,000 people in live audiences over those years, do a lot of radio and television like this, and teaching people the basics. And when people come up and say, so what do you do for a living? I say, I teach you how to spot trouble before trouble spots you. And really that's the essence of the message. Teaching people to use foresight being 20/20 rather than hindsight being 20. How do you see things before they happen? Therefore, how do you avoid them from happening altogether? Whether it's violence in the workplace or someone knocking on the door of your home that you'll know, or someone approaching your child with a hidden agenda, how do you begin to connect the dots before a pattern actually emerges?
That's so good. I think a lot of folks these days hear that and think, so you want us to, to think about it. Isn't that going to make us fearful? We don't want to walk around afraid all the time. What do you say against that?
I think a lot of people, when they say that, and I, of course, after as long as I've been doing this, I've heard it quite a bit.
I'm sure.
The reason most people are afraid is because they're unaware. They don't know what's out there. They don't know. If any time there's something around the corner and you're not sure what it is, you're going to be afraid of it. But if you realize, oh, that's my neighbor, that's my friend. Well, no, simple awareness replaces fear. But when you don't know what's out there or how these things work or how someone could approach you or what you should do in a moment, yes, you're going to be afraid. So the more we can educate the people, the more we take fear out of the equation and simply replace it again with awareness.
Awareness is key. And I think, too, with the day and age that we live in, unfortunately, there's a lot more violent crime that is happening that we're aware of. People are hypersensitive and more hyper aware, which in some ways is really good because there's a lot of folks who have never considered it before. They just have always felt safe. But now because, of course, of things that have been happening, people are feeling a lot more fearful.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit more about why do you think we're seeing more of it today than we have in years past?
Well, first of all, there is better reporting on these instances, so I think we're getting a little bit more aware thanks to our 24/7, 365 news media.
Sure.
But in addition to that, I think we're also living in a day and a culture where people, they're caught in these situations, again, of the fear, not knowing how to respond, and it can cause stress. Oh, take road rage, for example. What really is road rage? Typically speaking, you have two normally rational people who, for whatever reason, in this moment are irrational. Now, what caused that? Did they just lose their job? Did they just lose a divorce? Did they just lose a custody battle? Same thing with people fighting over parking lots at the malls during Christmas. I think stress factors in a lot, and we're living in a world today that's so technology-driven, and things are changing so rapidly, including people's jobs and careers, the uncertainty. It's also increased people's level of stress, and stress is definitely a precursor to many instances of violence, because when people get to that point, you've done all the right things, but you're just the proverbial wrong place, wrong person, wrong time, when this normally rational person just goes, and there you are.
Right.
So I think it's a combination of good reporting on the fact of the media, but also a lot of things are happening in our culture of uncertainty and change and stress, this fostering more aggression in our society.
It's so true. I mean, we see the aggression on social media. We see the aggression on the road. We see people just more, just more angry. And I think it's because they're afraid.
Yep.
People are more afraid right now. What are some things that we can do, or would you say is the number one thing we should be looking for when it comes to personal safety?
I think the one thing that we should be looking for is the one thing most people are not looking for. When we think in terms of an attack, we're thinking of the classic gun or knife, someone holding us up, someone telling us to get in the car, someone forcing their way into our home. What we're not looking for is the number one thing we should be looking for, and that is the good story. I'll give you a perfect example. About 6 months ago in my neighborhood, we have a system that many people may be watching. It's called Nextdoor.com. It's kind of like Facebook for your neighborhood.
Yes.
And an elderly couple in my neighborhood posted this story, and later I actually met the couple when I was telling their story at a church, and they came forward and said, that was us.
Oh,
That
my
actually
goodness.
happened to us. But what had happened is they were in their home one afternoon, a knock at the door, they open up, and here's a woman at their door, nicely dressed. She announces, I'm your new neighbor. Sure enough, the house next door to them was up for sale. So what does this couple do? Oh my gosh, our new neighbor, come on in. We want to visit, get to know you. So they spent a little time chit-chatting. She said, I've been thinking about doing some things in the backyard that might intrude a little bit upon the property line. So I want to make sure I'm a good neighbor. So do you mind if I take you out in the back and show you what I'm thinking of? So they all go to the backyard and they spend a little time chatting more. They come back in the house. She leaves. Sooner or later, the husband and wife go to the back room to get something. The whole place been ransacked. Jewelry stolen, cash, valuables stolen. She was the ruse, the lure to get them in the backyard while accomplice or accomplices ransacked the house.
Oh my goodness, they were being punished just for being good neighbors.
But again, was there a gun or knife involved?
No.
No, it was a good story.
That's terrible.
We have so many situations when you watch on the news where people are pretending to be people they're not. In fact, one of our national news shows just a couple weeks ago did a piece where they put a guy in a hard hat, a reflective vest, and a clipboard. And he went door to door on this national news show just seeing how many people would let him in, pretend to be someone he's not. And it was almost 100%. We've seen that here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, people pretending to be people they're not, whether it's a cable provider, whether it's electric company, whether it's a security company, a phone company, and people let them in. Not always for violence, but sometimes they're casing the places. We see it in businesses when people pretend to be people they're not, whether it's for stealing belongings or in today's society to get into possibly steal information, people's personal records for identity theft or other types of things. But it's that good story that no one's looking for because we're looking for the overt, not the covert.
What are some red flags and some questions to ask if we feel uneasy or if we're unsure or we're watching this for the first time and maybe a real person from our local city government is coming to knock on our door and we're a little scared now? What are some things we should ask?
Well, like President Reagan used to say years ago, trust but verify. So if someone comes to your door of your business or your home, they say, I'm with XYZ company. All right, call XYZ company before you let them in and verify, do you have this person working for you? And oh, by the way, what is the person's physical description? Because I've done this years ago. I did it with news crews where we would go out and I'd go to one of these, drop your business card in for a free whatever. I would take out a legitimate business card and then go pretend to be that person to see who would let me in. And time again, people did. And if they had called the employer and said, you have so-and-so working for you, of course, what would they have said?
This is not the person.
Well, they would have said, yes, that person
that
works
person,
for us,
yes, but, okay.
But if you'd ask, well, what does he look like? I would venture to
Right.
guess I look nothing like that person.
Right, exactly.
But people judge based on appearances. And far too often we assume that things are what they seem to be.
So if you're dressed the part and you have that card and you say you're this person, they're going to believe you. So
And it's very
call the
easy to
number.
manufacture a magnetic sign on a van or take some of these magnetic signs off legitimate vehicles and put them on yours, to take someone else's business card.
Yeah.
It's very, very easy to assume the persona of someone that you're not. In today's world, we call that social engineering. That's the new buzzword for it. But it's the same principle I've been teaching for 29 years.
So we don't have to walk around afraid, but we do need to walk around aware and vigilant. Just be aware that
With
these are
a
some of the
healthy
things.
level of skepticism.
Right.
If you didn't call the person to begin with who's showing up at your door, again, of your home or business, that warrants you calling to verify the person's credentials. But don't forget the physical description.
It doesn't make you rude. It makes you smart.
Yes.
Right. You just have to protect yourself and your family. You just have to do what you have to do that.
Absolutely
And be
you do.
wise about it. This is a good question, and we've talked about this before, but a misconception regarding public safety in public places. You know, we watch the old spy shows and, we're going to meet in a public place because we're safe there. It's fiction for a reason, so talk to us about that.
I understand the thought process behind it. Like the old adage, there's safety in numbers. You're safer in numbers, but there's not absolute safety in numbers. Ask people in Aurora, Colorado, the Boston Marathon bombing.
Exactly.
But when you're talking about public places, my first question is the public around? Because we have this misconception, just because I'm in a public place, that there are going to be people nearby to help. A month or so ago, I had a buddy who has a carpet cleaning business here in Dallas-Fort Worth. one of his business associates was actually roughed up at a car wash. He had the tub that was filled with dirty water, so he stopped at a car wash, broad daylight, to empty dirty water. While he did, 2 cars swooped in on the bay and blocked him in. You know how those car bays are. They swooped in on both sides, blocked him in, roughed him up, put him in the hospital with some minor bumps and bruises and stitches, and then stole equipment out of the van. They saw an easy target. Why did he go to that car wash? Because it was in a public place. But here's the thing. No one else was at the car wash at the time he was there. So even though you're at a public place, is the public around? We recently had a fitness instructor who was murdered in a church. She was the first person there in the morning. Would we consider a church to be, for the most part, a public place? Yes. But was there anyone else there at the time she was? One. And that ended up being her murderer. So we have this misnomer that just because I'm in a public place, that there are automatically going to be people around to help me. No, you need to do the math in advance. And that calls for a program we talked about before, situational awareness. Do the math before you put yourself in that environment to say, okay, yes, this is a public place. It's a parking lot, it's a parking garage, what have you. But is there anybody else here at the time I'm navigating that place?
Right.
That's the real question we should be asking.
That's a really good question to ask. And what's interesting is that, you mentioned the church. Most people think, I'm going to a church, I'm going to feel safer, or I'm in my home, in my driveway, I feel safer. You feel safer at your own job. You get this false sense of security with familiar places. And so it's just...
Well, we had that conversation a couple of years ago on the show that the place that you're the most vulnerable is the place you're most familiar with. Because that's where you have that level of comfort and you let your guard down.
Let your guard down. That's why they say that car accidents happen more frequently when you're closer to home than when you're away. Because of that, you let your guard down situation.
True. And it may be that mall you go to. It may be that church you go to. It may be the private school your kids go to. And you have that feeling of comfort. Therefore, you have a feeling of safety.
Right.
I get it, but it's a wrong way of thinking.
Right. So we have to stay aware no matter where we are.
And again, not fearful. Just aware.
Just aware, just aware. Technology. Actually, before we get to technology, let's talk about personal space, because we were talking about feeling safe in different locations and different places we go. But personal space, when it comes to your safety, we don't want to be rude to people. Right. But at the same time, we want to stay safe. So when it comes to our personal space, how do we protect that without coming across as being a not kind or a rude person? Well, for those who are watching, that are fans of YouTube, I would encourage them to go to YouTube and search, literally put in the word 21, like the letter or the numbers, 21-foot rule. And you'll see the same video that police officers and police departments have seen over the years across the country, where basically the police are told, if you let someone within 21-foot radius of where you are, they will get to you before you'll ever get to what's in your holster. Now, that's what is being taught to the police, who have been through a great deal of training and continue to go through training. Now, let's talk about you and me at the gas station. Oh, goodness. Right.
And someone approaches us. Now, chances are, if they're a panhandler or others, they're just wanting money. But still, what is that buffer zone that we maintain between us and an unknown person, regardless, as we've talked about before, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of size? None of those things mean anything. That's stereotyping, not profiling. So again, as you're looking at that distance that you're maintaining between people, think about your reaction time if something goes wrong. And understand that's the buffer zone that you need to maintain. If they move closer, you move back. If they move a little closer, you move back further. Mirror their distance, so you always keep that buffer between you and them. You have to be safe. You have to be vigilant. We have to go, but I want to make sure that people know where to get information if they have more questions. Simply defensebydesign.com. I even have some instructors now called Trouble Spotters. Spot trouble before trouble spots you. I have a license to start doing these programs. But if you get in touch with me at defensebydesign.com, whether it's me or one of my affiliated instructors, we can help get more information out to the public. Jeff, I always love it when you're here. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Sherry. And thank you all for watching us here at Joy in Our Town.